In a world filled with conflict, in a universe comprised of differences, there's one thing that absolutely everything shares in common. We all exist. Including two guys named Jack and Michael, who like to chat about that very thing over a good cup of coffee. Let's pay them a visit, shall we?
Existence Brewing.
And that's why they call it a cappuccino, is because the guy who invented it was the captain of St. Chino. Yeah. Hey, Jack.
Yeah, that's actually not entirely true.
Oh.
He doesn't have to know that. So.
Okay. You know Neil.
No.
Yeah, Neil was just telling me about some of his latest bumper stickers, and he asked me if that was a cappuccino. So
Captain Chino, actually, the story I remember about Captain Chino was he was in the running to Admiral to be the leader of this big boat that they were sending out there, and he was down to Captain Chino and Captain Crunch, and Captain Crunch won. The captain and Tennille came in a little bit late in the running, so
yes.
I'm feeling strange today, by the way. Just so forgive me if I have a sudden attack and have to step out. But I've been eating hemp hearts. Do you know what those are?
No.
I'm starting to wonder if it's the hemp hearts that I ate on my yogurt a little while ago before I came down here, because they're really good. I love the texture. Maddie got them. My girlfriend got them. She brought them home she got a Costco card. Now, she doesn't have a membership. I'd like to just lay that out because, of course, I have standards. And one of them is I can't date a woman who has a Costco membership because, it goes against my religious beliefs.
What's the difference?
Costco.
I thought you had to have a membership in order to shop at Costco. Is there a loophole that I'm not aware of?
There's some family loophole. She's attached to her mom's account. So anyway, she's got a card. So she goes in there and she buys stuff, and she brought home a big bag of hemp hearts. But I'm glad she did, because they're really good. They don't taste like much of anything, but the texture is just amazing. They're chewy. And so you can sprinkle them on everything, and it makes this chewy textural experience that it's not already.
They kind of look like chia seeds or something.
I literally put them on pizza the other day. I literally just put them on, and they were delicious because it added this chewy like thing. I love chewing them. So there's just something about hemp hearts, but I'm starting to wonder if they have some kind of certain foods have like a weird impact on my, the things that cause you to have anxiety and like panic and stuff are in your gut. All of the sensors you didn't know that? I can tell by the look on your face. Yeah. Your gut is attached. All the best doctors I've been to have said, we got to move on from your head and worry about your gut health. How's your gut health? Because when I was having panic disorder pretty bad and stuff like that, that's what they wanted to address finally was, well, we've got to look into your gut. So you got to take care of your gut if you want to take care of your mind, I guess, in that capacity. But anyway.
Well, hemp seeds I'm reading are incredibly nutritious. They have generous amounts of protein. They're a great protein source. They have a lot of different vitamins in them as well. They may reduce your risk of heart disease. The only problem is you're saying that you have to be close to a bathroom over the next 24 hours because they have ill effects on your digestion.
No, I don't think it can be that. No, it's not your digestion that it works on. It's just, there are certain things that I eat that cause panic. And I don't think I've had enough of the hemp hearts now as this hasn't happened. So it's something else. But like Cheerios, our good friends at General Mills, whatever they put in Cheerios, panic attack. And
Seriously?
Some people have said, Jack, you may have a mild case of celiac, disease. And I'm like, well, I don't, I've been to the doctor. They've said no. So in fact, they've said no to every disease I've tried to get. They've just said, no, Pass. I said, what about this? No, pass.
Don't you find that to be the case, though, when you're dealing with something that you don't understand, that you're always just trying to look for a label of it? Like you're almost just trying to be like, oh, yeah, I have celiacs, or I have, what's the one that we talk about all the time in my family household is lactose intolerant. You know, and so now I need to have avocado milk instead of, you know what I mean? Just
avocado milk. Still wondering how you milk an avocado, let alone an almond. Although there are little tiny teats on an almond, so I guess you got to squeeze them out real hard. I have a lot of intolerances, but lactose is not one of them. So we can just leave it at that. In fact, this show very often turns into a list of my intolerances. So, you know what somebody said? It's funny that I've never, and of all the people too, it's like my work's regional. She has one of these titles that regional district central operating
assistant
manager
to the general manager.
It's just one of these fucking titles. Like, give me a break already. We don't even know what she is, or we really don't even know what she does. But she checks in with us once in a while, and we have to like sit with her and have meetings and stuff. Like, oh, good Lord. So I was having my little one-on-one special with her not too long ago, and she was asking me about like the content that I'm producing for the station I work for, the written stuff. And I said, listen, the company has it really hard with me, and I'm basically just trying to fly as below the radar as possible so I don't lose my job, because you people have no clue who you have on your hands here. I'm as uninterested in things that are popular as anybody that has ever existed. I may as well be a hermit that's willing to go outside and just sort of be a part of general society as needed, you know, just like, you know, because so I'm kind of like an ad hoc, like hermit, I guess. Like it just, I have no interest in any of this crap that all these other people write about and get these trillions of hits that you guys are looking for online for your company. I don't want to write that stuff, even to just like earn my keep, I guess. I would rather not compromise the integrity of my ability to write and convey thought and emotion and feeling and information and all that. And she looked at me and she said, oh, you're a counterculture guy. And I was like, you know what? That is so interesting. Of all the things I've ever described myself, all the self-professions that I have ever made in my life about this particular annoyance of my personality to most people's measure, I have never said that I'm counterculture. And that is exactly right. I'm as counter to culture as it really gets. So anyway, I was really pleased coming out of that meeting for once, because I was like, I received a new definition from someone today that's actually fitting for once. I am a counterculture person. So
the reason you're hearing this music is this episode is not the episode that you just heard last week when Jack had this same conversation about the same instance in his life. We're just trying to remind the listeners that this is not a repeat of the episode that they just heard last week where you said almost the exact same thing.
Did I say the exact same thing?
You did. But that's okay.
Sorry, I didn't even realize that.
We said that you were like we said you were like the Fred Armistead of local media.
We didn't use the word counterculture.
You did use the word counterculture.
Did I use it?
You did.
Well, it just shows you how damn happy I am with the whole thing. By the way, the music reminds me entirely of like when they have to dub over all the Sesame Streets in the Deep South.
Right.
And put, this week's episode is brought to you by another letter that you don't know and never will.
I was thinking it reminds me of like the pharmaceutical commercials where it's like, hemp hearts may cause nausea, constipation, diarrhea, dry mouth, drowsiness, rash. Do not operate heavy equipment while consuming large amounts of hemp hearts.
Now we're hitting the rewind button on like a really early edition of the show, as I recall. And my biggest pet peeve about all of the side effects that are actually verbally exposed in the commercials from the major drug manufacturers that they actually probably legally have to read to us, like the big ones. And of course, if it's xylophonia, let's say that's the product. Names are getting that ridiculous. So do not take xylophonia if you're allergic to xylophonia. Well, how the fuck would you know that you're allergic to xylophonia unless you take it?
Right.
Like, aren't you guessing that most people watching this have never taken this stuff before, and that's why you want to like the doctor, ask your doctor about it today? So you're telling me not to take something that I'm allergic to that I have never taken before and I have no knowledge of being allergic to. That's counterintuitive. Please take that part out. The last thing I want to do is actually reduce the amount of liability that major pharmaceutical companies face on a daily basis from sue-happy law firms. In this case, though, I'm with them. Take that out. Just scrub it. That's ridiculous.
Well, and
that's like saying, don't go on a date with Martha if you don't like Martha. I've never met Martha before. It's a blind thing. Like that's like saying, don't try poutine if you don't like poutine. I've never had it before. How in the hell would I know?
Don't go on a blind date with Martha. Martha is very bad at blind dates.
Yeah, I would just annoy the hell out of Martha by constantly peppering her about questions about the vineyard. She'd be like, so this vineyard, my family doesn't have a vineyard. Oh, yeah, that's right. But Martha's vineyard? You are a sassy gal, you Martha. Can I call you Marty? Let me call you Marty. I'll tell you what, let me give you a big old kiss. I'll get to second base and start calling you Marty. Huh? I got my car out back right now. Oh, good Lord.
Oh, geez. We have too much fun.
So here's something that I have to mention because the Christ people came to our door the other day. And the first thing I want to do is
Latter-day Saints?
I believe they were, yeah, I think so. Honestly, I don't know anymore. The branding is all changed, and that's kind of what I'm really going for here. But the first thing I want to do is salute anybody who belongs to a major practicing theology, like a world religion or something that's still going door to door. In this day and age, that is dangerous work.
It takes some serious commitment.
And here's the thing about Jack Hansen. I mean, yeah, I have my convictions and my passions, and I will absolutely lambaste anybody who, in whatever way I feel is an affront to those in a way that's egregious to, universal prosperity and peace and progression and all that kind of stuff. But I will give props where they're due. It's like those people that are the anti-abortion people, the baby rights activists and stuff.
With the signs.
I may not agree with their ideologies, but I absolutely will credit them with standing up for their passion, for what they believe in. To me, that's always a good first step. So I want to salute the major religions that still send people out and find people do this, because it's tough. Going knocking on doors in this day and age, like that is crazy. In this instance, it was two women, a younger gal who was probably no more than early 20s, I would say late teens, probably more likely, and an older gal, middle-aged, perhaps my age or a little bit on beyond that. And it was as though she was sort of the teacher. Like the older one did all the talking and the other one just sort of stood there with her hands folded in front of her and was observing, or because they sort of told her, now don't talk because that's kind of the first thing I wanted to do was just like, you shut your yapper over here, oldie. I want to talk to this one. Just like, oh no, really put the young one on the spot.
Yeah.
It's like, they tell you to do this, but so anyway, what I'm driving at is the literature that they handed us, because it used to be the old Watchtower. I mean, I had lots and lots of different iterations of the Watchtower hanging around my house when I lived in another apartment across town years ago, because I used to drop by frequently. And I would take a few minutes to converse with them. I'd never let them in, because to me, that's like a vampire thing. Don't ever let Jehovah's Witnesses into your house, my dear boy. It renders you powerless. So,
well, wasn't your mom a member of the LDS?
No, well, so my mom and father were both raised in Mormon country, by Mormons, but there was not a lot of churchy practicing. They were
okay, because I remember your mom had some history in Latter-day Saints.
They both did, but I don't think the church was ever really heavily an influence. Certainly, when I came around, there was no influence from the church at all. In fact,
you guys never hosted, a group of missionaries.
But when mom got older and started living on her own and was lonely, she had the lonely old lady, empty nester syndrome. She would invite them in and entertain them for hours with, like stale cookies that had been in the top shelf of the cupboard forever. And,
I'm
she
sure
wanted somebody to talk to. And so I remember coming over several times and finding them there. And then as soon as I showed up, she was like, okay, it's been nice. Get the fuck out. Go on. My son's here, So. But on their way out, I would be like, hey, I just want to thank you for coming in and keeping my mom come to me. It means a lot to me, And, oh, no problem. Your mother's a delightful woman. And she's very smart about Jesus. I'm like, as she always has been, take a look at me. And I get the fuck out. But speaking of Jesus, they gave us this literature. They gave us this pamphlet. And I'm telling you what, Jesus has grown up over the years on this literature. I mean, the picture that they had of him, the depiction, my God. I immediately took it over to Maddie and said, Maddie, take a look at this. You can, and she was dead on. She just goes, it's Zac Efron. And I was like, okay, I haven't seen him, I guess, enough to really know.
They're trying to appeal to a younger audience, is what you're saying.
I went Josh Brolin.
Oh, okay.
But when we compared it all side by side, it was Zac Efron as Christ. That means absolutely just dead on, dead ringer.
So the sex appeal of Christ has really risen.
Oh, Jesus is a fucking hunk in 2025. Let me tell you, there is some serious, there is some canoodling panache under his robe that there's never been before. And which is so counterintuitive, of course, because so many Christians are so particular about him being pure. Like the rumor, and it's a pretty good historical rumor that biblical scholars are starting to turn on a lot and say, Jesus actually was with a woman. He may have actually been married to Mary Magdalene, all these other things. Oh, God, it drives some of the purest Christians absolutely nuts. No, Jesus never touched a woman, never had a thought in his life that was sexual. It's like, well, we assume he had working parts under there. And if that's the case, as a man, we can both attest to the fact that no matter how nice we may want to be, thoughts take over. Like there's an instinct or a drive that's especially primal. And that's part of the fun of being human, is when you become an awakened individual and decide I'm going to defy these things to try and jump over the gigantic hurdles that presents in your day. If it's time to, let a few of the ponies swim out of the farm, if you know what I mean. So,
well, I always think of the analogy of like Talladega Nights. Thank you, baby Jesus, for this meal. You don't have to refer to Jesus as baby. No, that's my favorite. That's my favorite type of Jesus, is baby Jesus.
Yeah. Well, now you got a new type to choose from, and that's the Efron Jesus.
Jesus, I like it.
Yeah, Efron Jesus is something else, and man, he is rocking it. Like there isn't a woman alive, and I'm a straight guy. I'm just, I don't know, that whole thing gets you in trouble these days to talk about how you're wired sexually, but you talk about a stud. The artist went beyond. I hope they paid that guy very well, because it's just like, all right, Clark, now what we'd like you to do is take Jesus, of course, the classic depiction, and then make him into this. And they just gave him a picture of Zac Efron, but he went above and beyond. I mean, there was musculature under the robe and just the right spots. And I mean, they've taken the beard down to, more of a, I groom myself down there sort of look. So, he manscapes. This is the first manscaping Jesus we've had. I mean, it was incredible. It was truly incredible. It was an experience like no other that I've had, being handed a piece of biblical-based literature, a piece of evangelical literature at my front door by somebody coming around and saying, and we probably should, that's the thing. God's probably up there going, oh, they're just going to say no, but all right, give it a go.
Even after I give them Efron Jesus.
Even after Efron Jesus comes around, they still don't want to listen to my boy. So, and the miracles he could work in bed, I don't want to tell you.
And you didn't bring it with you.
Jesus. So there it is.
Oh man, if there's a man that you're going to follow into eternity, it is that man right there.
I mean, holy himself. It's Zac Efron.
It is.
And, he's aged extremely well too. So as I was starting to say, on that similar note, we got an ad for Brawny paper towels last night on the feed. They just cannot stop dicking around with the Brawny paper towel guy either. Because when I was growing up, the Brawny paper towel guy looked exactly like the husband of this woman who worked for my father named Linda. His name was Randy. And every time Randy came over, I swear I would dash to the cupboard to see if we had an unopened roll of Brawny paper towels, just so I could sneak up behind him and hold it up so everybody could look like it's him. He right down to the red flannel. The guy wore the same shirts, and so he had that very 70s Marlboro Man look when I was growing up. But I know prior to that, he had a beard like some lumberjack, because of course lumber, paper, towels. There's a great connection there. Then they stripped him of his facial hair at some point, I want to say in the 90s or early aughts, when this alpha male thing hadn't come back into vogue as big as it is now. And so he'd been, as far as I know, he'd been facial hairless for decades. And then all of a sudden he shows up and he looks like Paul Bunyan. He's got the full beard is back. And I don't know how I feel about the fact that an advertising icon is able to shave every so often. Like Colonel Sanders has always presented exactly the same. They restylized him on the bucket. That'd be great too, to like have your head on a bucket filled with fucking chicken. Like, what a great honor that is. Like, yeah, my head's on every bucket that they sell chicken in the goddamn States. Look at this boy over here. So they restylized him at some point, but he still looked exactly the same.
Right.
And no other advertising icons that I can think of who are either human or anthropomorphed other things ever change their look completely. Again, they can be
wait a minute. Remember, this was another episode very early on when we talked about Ronald McDonald and how the guy who was on TV, the weatherman,
Willard Scott, claims that he invented Ronald McDonald. Yes.
Yeah.
But Ronald McDonald essentially has looked the same over the years. He's a clown with red hair. He's a
clown.
He's never shaved. He's never he doesn't show up suddenly with a tan.
But early Ronald, that's true. The early Ronald McDonald, though, did have a John Wayne Gacy vibe to him.
All clowns do. They're clowns. Clowns are evil. Clowns are, I'm sorry, that's another prejudice that Jack Hansen has. Clowns are inherently evil. I have coulrophobia, okay? It's a thing. Look it up. So there's a reason to be afraid of clowns.
So my daughter and I watched the movie It over the weekend, and it was the original.
Which one?
The original one.
The original made for TV?
Yeah.
With Harry Anderson and John Ritter? Oh, my God. Yes. Yeah. I love movies with Harry Anderson and John Ritter.
That movie was, I felt, when I was a kid, like the pinnacle of horror. Yeah, like it was scary, scary, scary. I watched it with my daughter, and she's laughing at it.
And I'm like, that's nothing. What? By today's standards?
Oh, by today's standards, it is so tame. But no, I've heard that the new It movies are very, very scary.
You have. I've seen those. You have.
I haven't seen. I think I saw maybe like the first one a while ago. But yeah, I didn't watch the whole thing. But yeah, it is definitely a notch above.
I want to say the first, because they did 2 volumes. They did, because if you've ever read the book, then you know that the first part of the book is dealing with it when the characters are children, and then the second part of the book is dealing with it when they grow up. And so they did 2 movies, one that represents both. And I want to say the last movie that I saw in the theater, shows you how often I go to movies in the theater, was in 2018, late 17, early 18, at the IMAX in Panama City Beach, Florida. I saw the first It that they made of the new ones with Bill Skarsgård, I think, plays It in this one. Tim Curry played It in the television version, and that's just legendary. I mean, you got to respect that. But that for we've been watching actually a lot of Stephen King made-for-TV movies. We've been kind of on a binge lately. And The Stand is the top. The Langoliers has a special place. I love The Langoliers. That's like second. And then Night Flyer is excellent. So I'd probably put them in that order. Sadly, It is just, for all of the star power that it has, all of the B star power that it has, and then the great story and everything, it didn't translate well. I don't like it as much as I wish that I did, I guess, in reality. But anyway, yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, a few summers ago, I remember renting the Shining from the local library, and I did remember how the book, The Shining.
When did you retire?
I'm sorry?
When did you retire? I rented The Shining from the local library. Yeah, is this on? My hearing aid down.
Okay, innkeeper.
That's the kind of thing he would say.
It is very true. But no, I remember I rented the Shining from the local library, and I remember just how good of a book that was. and how many more layers to the character development there is in a Stephen King book. And I think that's when, that's like that's the classic line when someone says, that a film that was adapted from a book, oh, well, the book is so much better. No, I mean, in that case, the book is really that much better. It really has some good parts in it.
Well, Stanley Kubrick drove everybody crazy making the original film, which turned out pretty good. I would say that's one of the better film adaptations of Stephen King's catalog, even though The Shining is a very complex book as far as character development and things that kind of go uncharacterized on screen, or they can't be because it's just too difficult, I guess, to portray in a visual aspect, or you don't have enough time. That's the big constraint with it. I mean, they could make that movie 10 hours long. They could have done 5 movies and never gone into all of the little rabbit holes that are in that book. So, and I know we also just, Maddie showed me the new Salem's Lot. They came out with one a couple of years ago. And
that's right, they did.
It was good. It was okay. I mean, as she said, they did a good job of finally condensing the film to a digestible cinematic package, because the problem with the made-for-TV versions that preceded it, threefold, I want to say. I know they did one in the late 70s as well as one, I think, in the 90s, and they may have done another one. But anyway, they were just long. They were really just too long, and they became, I don't know, they were hard to swallow, because you kind of just want, movies are different than books, because books, I feel like you're almost just part of the experience includes the patience that's necessary to really key in on and spend some time with the characters and learn about their history and learn about the nuances and idiosyncrasies of their personalities. That's part of reading fiction. And so it just goes with the territory. It's an unwritten rule of reading. But movies are a flash grenade experience. Movies are supposed to, especially modern movies, we expect things to happen. We want to move along in the story. So we understand there has to be some backstory, some setup, but we need to get that out of the way in a tidy enough fashion so we move on, and there can be car wrecks and explosions and vampires biting people and blood spurting, because that's what cinema has maybe even unfortunately become. But I also remember growing up in a different time and watching movies that were dramas, and still great dramatic movies. Places in the Heart comes to mind. Steel Magnolias, you could say. Things still happened in those movies, but there was plenty of time for drama and dialogue. But things still, the movies moved at a good pace. Some fell flat, like The Big Chill. Oh, God, And, I mean, there were a few real stinkers in there that just didn't go anywhere. But anyway, it's just, so that was kind of the new Salem's Lot for me, was, it condensed the book nicely into something that was more of a vampire movie. Although the vampire in the book, Stephen King's original book, was always supposed to be sort of like the original Nosferatu in the silent movie from the 1900s, the early 1900s. But I don't know. I didn't care for it. I thought it was too skinny. I thought he was just a little too cartoonish. There was something about him that wasn't scary enough for me, because I don't like the original Nosferatu thing. Like, my sister and I used to hate that when they'd show and they'd always show it in like comedic aspects too. They'd show it in these kids. I think they show it in SpongeBob panels, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, like they've used the original Nosferatu from the silent film in SpongeBob panels in a kid's cartoon. It's like, it's laughable. I think that fucking thing's scarier than shit. I wouldn't want that coming into my window at night. I wouldn't want to see that.
Did you ever see the TV show that Nosferatu?
I can't say that rings a bell.
I think it was on A&E or AMC. It's that network that has The Walking Dead on it.
Oh, yeah, that's AMC.
Yeah, and AMC had a series for a little while, that Nosferatu, and it was a pretty good modern adaptation of that whole, just kind of, it was completely different than the silent film character that you're talking about, but just that whole sense of, him abducting children, and it has kind of a Pennywise slant to it, and so yeah, check that out if you haven't. That's a good one.
Well, the undead in general, along with lycanthropy, became so immensely popular at some point, I think in the late 90s or early 2000s, that it's still not, the engines just haven't stopped in that thing. And zombies, became so prolific that they actually turned into a prevailing theory that's widely accepted by people, that along with giant asteroid and supervolcano, that zombie apocalypse is an actual thing that could materialize in our earthly plane and destroy all of us. And this goes back several episodes too, but I can never say it enough. Look around you. It's here. Okay. So there, just enough said. Go to Las Vegas or Disneyland. You will see the zombie apocalypse, or Walmart, anywhere in the world. You will see the zombie apocalypse in action today, any day of the week. So it's like, I don't know what people are so concerned about. It's like, it's fucking here and you're a part of the problem. So, but anyway, and if you're looking to eat brains so much, like, why don't you start using the one you have before you start worrying about brains? It's just like, but instead it's beer, porn, sports. Kind
of reminds me of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Remember that movie?
I remember the movie and the television show.
Probably one of the worst vampire adaptations ever to leave Hollywood was Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Well, it was supposed to be campy, though. I mean,
that's
you got to keep that in mind. I mean, they weren't being incredibly serious in that. So.
Paul Rubens was in that movie.
I don't recall that.
Yeah, and so was Rutger. Really? Rutger Hauer was in that movie.
Boy, there's a cast for you. Rutger Hauer.
Why does he keep coming up in this podcast? I swear, every time we talk about a movie, Rutger Hauer's name comes up.
I kind of think you should have said that like Pee-wee. Why do you keep coming up in this podcast? Just like so.
That's a really good. I had no idea you were capable of that.
Oh, I know. That's what I wanted all the women to say the first time I did it before they ran out screaming.
I gotta find my bike.
See, that's not bad. You got it. It's not like top shelf, but your middle drawer. So
okay,
that's a good one to.
Okay, Francis. I know you are, but what am I?
That's one to spring on them after it's gone well for like the first couple of weeks. You know what I mean? Like you really set them up for the fall. You know what I mean? Like take them out and really, and be extremely, be the gentleman, be the polymath that you are, and impress them with knowledge about, from this subjects from A to Z, and, not wine and dine, but truly sit and listen and, just truly make the man of their dreams mark. And then one night, before you're about to turn the Zac Efron Jesus page in your playbook, you go, and just get the Pee Wee Herman out and see how well it goes from there. Oh, it's a lead weight, my friend. Lead fucking weight. I know last week I'd mentioned flow, and not, as I will remind, from Progressive. We don't have to go into that again. I'm going to get in so much hot water, not that I haven't already, for I feel like, and I was thinking about this the other day, so let me break this down before we step into the gift of flow. So that to me is like what, for me anyway, Existence Brewing is. I know for Michael Elliott, it may be something different, and then his different melds together with my different, and it becomes whatever it is, with a big frothy layer of cappuccino foam on the top. But for me, it's like one part mission statement. It's one part say these things because they need to be said, and for whatever reason, we've run out of messenger boys, so we've chosen you, Jack. So just do it already. And, spread the good Lord's word, or the good universe's word, or source, or whatever you want to call it. It's all the same thing. Let's not argue about that and kill more people over an ideological divide we can't possibly even begin to prove, except to say that there is something more and that it's benevolent and wonderful and we're sharing in it. So go forth and do that, do your work. But at the same time, it's such a heavy catharsis for me to do this as well. And to me, this is where the beauty of the show happens that might miss other people, because they'll say, well, Jack will say the most wonderful things and, about humanity and about existence. And then all of a sudden he'll say that we should string up Kim Kardashian and he should beat her with a piñata stick until this horrible black
which he never said
comes out.
Which he never said, by the way. And I think that episode needs to be removed from existence because that's where our listenership went down the shitter.
No. I disagree. We can have a talk about this off podcast, off pod. But no, I disagree, because to me, that's the beauty of it, because it's an amalgamation of what we're really should be about the patience and understanding and love and all these progressive universal things, but we're stuck in this nightmare equation that we've created. And so these feelings of hostility and anger are presentable at any time, because it's frustrating, because that better part of not only ourselves, but of the whole collective of us within this experience is aching to get out. It's tearing at your wet paper bag from last episode and getting absolutely fucking nowhere, because it's stultified by money and the notion of this system and going somewhere and being something and developing a legacy and living on the hill and being in a gated community and being affluent and being better than everyone. And that's all bullshit. And we all instinctively fucking know it. And we lash out. People like me, at least, we have the capacity to lash out, and it feels good, because even though violence and all these things, yes, it's counterintuitive. What else are we supposed to do when that's what we're presented with within that construct? You know what I mean? I mean, if the world was getting along and it was nothing but love, sweet love, because it was Burt Bacharach's birthday yesterday, I think. So happy birthday, Burt. He's still alive, by the way. I think he's 85 or 90. So, or maybe he died a couple years ago. Anyway, it doesn't matter. If we were living that reality, then you'd have every reason to sick you and anybody else on Jack Hansen you wanted to, because he'd be wrong. And I would be. But we don't live in that reality. We live in a space and time where we have horrible people representing horrible, terrible concepts that are reprehensible. And to me, we don't take up swords and truly do those things. I don't want to kill anybody physically, but to eviscerate them in a verbal sense, to give them a tongue lashing on our little forum, in my mind, absolutely, because it's deserving. They're examples of what we shouldn't revere, and yet that's exactly what people do. And so to me, that's what I kind of figured out was the show. So I know last time when I was talking about the gift of flow, I said something about flow from progressive and stringing her up in the town square and, doing something with it. It's the same thing. It's just, it's not misguided hostility, because to me, it's pointed in exactly the right direction. It's an insurance company that could absolutely give a fuck about you or anybody or anything that you've ever cared about or loved at all. It is a behemoth juggernaut with no slowing. It's an appetite that's insatiable for money. That's it. That's all the insurance industry is interested in. Have you ever been denied a claim? If you said no, you're lucky, because many, many people who've lost much more than just, a fender in a car wreck or whatever, have been told no by the insurance company. They hire people whose jobs it is to figure out ways not to do what they're supposed to do, which is pay for stuff that gets destroyed in earthquakes and floods and fires, etc. They have people that are paid, figure out a way not to pay Mrs. McGillicuddy. Fuck her. That's the name of the game. So to me, when I say derogatory statements about flow from progressive, it's pointed in exactly the right spot. And if flow is the instrument to try to get to us to say, look how much we care about you and we're so fun and this is such a frivolous exercise. Insurance, it's fun. We're having fun. We're making jokes and gaggery on this commercial. Fuck you. I'm not buying it. I never did. I never fucking will. So we move on to the gift of real flow, FLOW, which I'll just read for you what I have written down. See, isn't that Isn't that nice? See, I always feel so
do.
much better after that stuff
It's
happens.
like eating a shit sandwich.
Yeah, but it tastes really good on the way down, which is kind of interesting, right? So
Kind of like hemp hearts.
Yeah, shit sandwich, hemp hearts. Eating a shit sandwich from the insurance company this week? Try hemp hearts. It'll make it go down easier. See? We just married two worlds that have longed to be together. It's like chocolate and peanut butter. I miss those commercials, though, the Reese's ones. You got your chocolate stuck in my peanut butter. It's just like, yeah. All right. The gift of flow. What am I talking about? Maybe this will frame it, and then we can have a discussion about it. It's brief. The involuntary knowing and acting upon the universal principle that absolutely everything happens for the most progressive reason for you and at the divine right time, even and including all of the useless, seemingly little things and annoyances that occur during the course of any day. That's the gift of flow. That's what my definition was. So again, the involuntary knowing and acting upon the universal principle that absolutely everything happens for the most progressive reason for you and at the divine right time, even and including all of life's little annoyances. And where this comes from is Jack Hansen being in a car, at the wheel of a car, because as so many of us do, I tend to change personas rapidly when I'm operating a motor vehicle. It's common. It's, sadly, it's one of the places road rage comes from. We get in that 3,000 pound steel chassis and we feel invincible and we start throwing our weight around. And even the nicest and most demure of people turn into firecrackers. They turn into people who are ready to gut you for doing the stupidest thing in front of them on the roadway, and it doesn't matter. So I'm a very self-analytical person, and this is a side of me that I've long desired to get under control. And there are days, even weeks at a time, where I can rope it into a more Zen space and not worry about it and hang back at the lights. But otherwise, I tend to be in my small town, even, or medium-sized town we live in, a pretty aggressive driver. I'd like to think that I have a good balance of aggressive and, passive driving, because that's really what the best drivers have. I think I tend to lean a little bit more towards aggressive because I'm getting where I'm fucking going, and these people that don't know what they're doing in front of me are all in my way. The problem with that, when you talk about the gift of flow, is that if you're in such a hurry to get somewhere and the light turns red, and you know that even though you're only going to run it by a few seconds, you should stop, but you don't, and you run it anyway. And then at the next intersection, literally within seconds, bam, that's when the tractor trailer truck comes from out of nowhere and slams into you and ends this little experiment for you when it didn't need to happen at all. And it also inconveniences a lot of other people, like the guy who hit you, that now is going to have to explain, oh, God, I didn't mean to hit him. Am I going to lose my job? And then the other people that saw you get sawed in half by the thing, and that's going to be traumatic. So look at what you've done just for the sake of trying to get somewhere 35 seconds quicker, or however long it would have taken you to stop at the red light. So, and that happens, and we never know, like, when we've lost it, when we're going too fast through life and there's no turning back as a result of that. So that's where that little kind of message from the big U came from for me was, look, if you don't slow down, kiddo, and just start taking life as it comes, and you want to get, we understand that you want to get home, and it's just like our goals in life or the things that we want. I want it now. It's got to be right now. I don't want to wait for it. I want to work for it. Waiting for it and working for it usually go hand in hand too. But some things are absolutely just gifted to us. They're like, it's like Ephraim Jesus and divine intervention. It comes and just hands it to you, but you have to wait. It's like Christmas morning. You'll get it, but it's only Thanksgiving. You got a month to go. Wait. But you're snooping around, looking all over the house for the packages and open them up. And, what the hell is that? And don't give me this bullshit about you could die, before Christmas morning, so you may as well get it now. that's not what we're talking about. You're circumscribing the analogy now. I mean, you're nullifying what I'm trying to say just by being an idiot. So, in no equation should that be the case. So just take life as it comes. I know that's a very laissez-faire, kind of ideology, and that a lot of people don't really subscribe to that in this day and age because it's passé, it's too hippie, it's too, West Coast, don't have a job, silver spoon. But it goes a long way in all of our lives to saying that, we are in a rush, but we're not just in a rush. The mechanics of the exercise in that model, that example I showed, where you don't stop for the red light, even though you easily could have and should have, but you only run it by a few seconds, but you still hit the kid in the crosswalk as a result and kill him and devastate his parents. And, maybe he was destined to be, the next, I don't know, whoever. He was going to invent the gizmo that cleaned up the world's oceans finally, or, maybe he was Ephron Jesus and we just didn't know it, but you ran him over because you just couldn't wait to get 3 blocks away to wherever the fuck you have to get to so fast. That mechanical example, that physical incarnate example should go to the spiritual aspects of our life and plug into all walks of our life to say that we're in a rush to do everything. This technological pace that we've established for ourselves and we tick on now has put us in a hurry to do everything. People think they can have awakenings and enlightenment just by, I'll pop in a tape and overnight and I'll wake up a different person, or I'll read this book and it'll change my life. That's not how epiphanal energy works. That's not how interventions design ratchets you to a different place. It takes lifetimes, really, or at least most of this lifetime, to begin shifting perspectives. You have to go through experiences. It was suggested to me probably 15 years ago that I pursue something like this and talk about subjects like this. But really, at 35 or so then, what in the hell did I know about anything? I'd been through my share of things by 35, but in the last 15 years since that suggestion was made, I've been through 10 times as much. 10 times as much. I've experienced the loss of most of my family in more ways than just by physical death, by the way. I've experienced a divorce. I've experienced the trauma of losing best friends. I've experienced a lot of things I had no clue about before. And everybody experiences those things differently. But again, to me, there's a divine right time for these things. So me being pushed into that to say, hey, Jack, you got to go now, do this now. The internet's not waiting. It's a burgeoning thing. Get out there and say this. I don't have anything to say at this point. I just started taking notes. And then a year ago, here comes all the notes. The time presented itself because my good friend and ex-colleague, Michael Elliott, said, we should start a podcast. We both have things to say. It'd be fun. And I said, sounds good to me. And so here we are. So am I suggesting that's the divine right time for Existence Brewing? You bet I am, because I allowed it to get to a place where it meant something for me and hopefully for you. And you've professed that on the show before too. So anyway, I'd love to get your thoughts on all this. I've been talking as usual for a length of time that's probably too long, but the gift of flow, remember that every day there's a flow to the universe and you're a part of it. And even though red lights and things like that, I don't know, having to wait for anything in this lifetime that we're made to wait for feels like it's just unnecessary. I want to go with the flow, but the flow is being interrupted by, people aren't paying me back on time, or I'm not getting my paycheck on time, or not making enough money, or I don't have the relationship that I want, or all these things that we just say, it's not right. It's not right. I got to get it now. You got to stop and try to put your arms out and just literally let the flow carry you. I really feel like it's a physical exercise that you can do if you find yourself in a rhythm that's too quick for this experience. It's too rapid. Put your arms out, close your eyes, tilt your head back, take a couple deep breaths, and get back in the flow because it surrounds you all the time. And I guarantee you, when you're pissed off at the guy in front of you because he won't fucking move, you're not in the flow that you're supposed to be. You're in a riptide that's going to crash you somewhere you don't want to be. So just a thought.
Yeah, and it kind of also touches on, that's great. And I think it also, I was thinking today, even before we met up for coffee at Existence Brewing Cafe, I was thinking about the download that you shared last week in the wasting time.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and how it kind of also goes hand in hand with this. And I think this is kind of like a part 2 to that, because you brought it up at the last episode as well. In terms of the flow, and I think there's like almost this sense of, not that there has to be an undue pressure, I think, on any of us to try and make the most of our time, because I think then that can kind of take on a whole nother weird thing, like, oh, I'm wasting time, I'm not, and I think that also when you're going through these things, there are so many things that I can think of in my life that you're not even going to grasp or learn at all what it is you're supposed to learn from a situation until it's time. And I think off the air we had said something. One of my favorite quotes that I recently heard from somebody was, when the student is ready, the master will appear. And that kind of keeps coming back into my mind as well. In that, when the time is ready, or when you're ready for this opportunity, or when you're ready for this, whatever it might be, to happen, I think you have to, in some ways, surrender to the universe that, it's going to happen when everything is just right. And I think there's also times, too, in our lives where, it's not just one moment in time that happens. Because can you imagine how stressful that would be if, every time something great happens to you in your career or in your social life or what, your love life or whatever it might be, that it all just pins on or hinges on one moment and you saying the right thing at the right time in order for you to be successful. That's to me, that's where it's like you're almost putting too much pressure on the process. And when you're in a position to fully take advantage of that, I think there's times too that I've found where, like it almost is like a reoccurrence. Like this moment is repeating itself. Oh, here it comes again. Here comes the opportunity. Now, am I going to take that opportunity? Am I going to grasp that opportunity? Am I going to make the most of that opportunity? Or is it going to go away until the next time it comes back around?
Yeah, that it's funny because I was at the gym yesterday, and at the gym, they have a lot of TVs around because, of course, you can't go in and just work out without visual stimulation as well. You can't, and there's a screen on the fucking like treadmill as it is that you can change channels on, and I can look at like, oh, this is the, dark path, or you're, running the streets of Boston, or it's ridiculous. I mean, we're so overstimulated and we're dependent on technology for that stimulation, and it scares the shit out of me. Anyway, some ESPN show was on, one of these shows where these guys get paid to banter about sports, which is absolutely just meaningless, in the world that we live in, quite frankly, when it comes down to it. And they were showing panels of Michael Jordan repeatedly over and over again. There were about 4 or 5 of his best moments that they kept showing. And there's one where he makes like a shot at the end of the game, and then he's like fist pumping and, this whole thing. So when you were talking about, we get to those moments that we feel are crossroads moments. We get to those moments where we feel like this is the threshold, this is the zenith, this is the nexus of this buildup that I've had. It's like an orgasm, and, boy, you better make it a good one because, the whole thing is just going to be not worth it if you don't. That's that money shot mentality. And that's exactly what you're talking about. And what it is it's a sports thing, in that metaphor, but what it is, it's a militaristic exercise that we perform. It's a way that we've learned to be divisive, because you're dividing yourself from the true purpose of the moment, which was the journey in the first place.
Exactly.
The arriving, and every wise man that ever said, it's not about arriving, it's not about the destination, it's about the journey, is absolutely dead on. They've lived and they understand a few things. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't go places and we don't achieve things, but when you're looking for the money shot before you want to, like I said, you want to get there, you're not even appreciating what it takes to get there. And that's one of my big problems with sports. I love sports. This is a really hard one for me, and we talk about this a lot on Existence Brewing, because sports continues to try to tug me back in, because I'm interested in the games. I really am. I'm interested in the strategies of the games as a thing, as a creature that has this ability to think and this critical mind. And so the strategies of the games, and then combined with the pageantry and the excitement and the tension and all of the things that are non-formulaic that go into the emotional makeup of what's happening, and then all of the colors of the uniforms and the different places where the players are from and their backgrounds. Oh, it's wonderful. I mean, it's why I got interested in sports in the first place when I was a young person, because there was so much to explore. There were so many things to unlock within the world of just, but yet the exercise is remedial. The exercises in all sports are remedial, and the losers are vastly too many. I mean, I don't think I ever got a chance to complete my thought about this some podcasts ago when it was March Madness, and we were talking about the number of Division I basketball teams there are now, and they're like 350. And think about it. The fans, if you just plug it into only so many teams go to the tournament, and then only so many teams win the tournament, which, by the way, is one. So that means that the fan bases, let's say there's 1 million fans for every team that exists, that's 350 million people, which that's too many, but let's just say that for the sake of mathematical equation in this. That means that 349 million people of the 350 million who were engaged in this exercise go home feeling empty. They go because very few of them are going to be able to walk away from that and say, well, it was a good season anyway, gosh darn it, and we'll get them next time. That is not that is not how we're wired.
That's right. That is so true.
We are wired to want to subscribe to something that constantly makes us a winner. And I know that's just puke inducing.
But I think,
it's junior soccer. Everybody's a winner. Let's have a pizza party.
When your team,
You get what I'm saying.
I do. And when your team wins the Super Bowl after so many years, and
we experienced this.
Yeah, after so many years and so many just mediocre seasons. It was an interesting moment, because one of the things that I first started thinking about was how my grandpa, who had passed away, wasn't alive to see this moment. And I was just thinking to myself, man, he was such a fan of this team. He never would have even dreamt that little old mediocre football team would someday win the frickin' Super Bowl. And I think that's kind of what you're talking about. It's that process. It's the moments that they didn't win, and the moments that you sat and you talked about that team with somebody that, maybe isn't around to enjoy that moment with you. And that's the thing that almost makes it larger than life and more than just the game, right?
Not that anybody can't probably figure out who this team is, but I think it's what I love is the retrospect that we're able to take on this team, because this team, quite honestly, not surprisingly either, since it's a fabric of my background as a rooter, as a person who learned how to root for a certain color during a literal turf war. We don't like those other guys. We like these guys. That is a divisive exercise. It's not healthy. And I'm sorry, football fans or fans of any team sports. It is true. That is not progressive for humanity. I know that we all want the game and we all want the fun And we all want all the stuff that I just described. But the problem is we got to figure out a different way to do it, or just finally graduate from it and say, you know what? We've played enough hockey. We've played enough football. We've played enough highlight.
It's impossible to do it in sports, though. It's impossible because for every yin, there's a yang. And for every winner, there has to be a loser.
But this team's history, this particular team's history in the big game is perfect for this analogy, because they came into the National Football League in 1976, and they were, like most expansion teams, they were terrible for the first few years. And then they actually started going somewhere quickly, but they couldn't get over the hump, and then they weren't good for a while longer. Looked like they were going to get there in the mid-'80s, never did. Fast forward to the 40th incarnation of this big game, and they finally go. And it's rigged. And it's clearly rigged. And even people like who are not Jack Hansen, who say there's so much money involved that it's all rigged from the beginning of the season, preseason on,
right.
Which I absolutely believe. Even people who don't,
the referees were on the take.
Even they say that game was rigged. So we go the first time and the game is fixed. The next time we go several seasons later, it's a big win and it's everything we've been waiting for. And we get to relish in being number one. We get to know what the feeling is like. And then only a few months go by, which are literal partial grains of sand in this exercise, and a new season starts. And they go back again. And the last play of the game is, what the fuck was that? And you lose. And and then the feeling and all of the stuff that you had the year prior, all the good stuff was taken away and snatched because you didn't get more. And I think that's such a perfect analogy in literal terms of what happened historically with this to quantify what we're talking about. Look at that moment. You finally got there and you finally know what it feels like. Move on. Move on to something else and experience something else. But instead, we repeat the same thing over again. And because we don't win every single year from there, we're not happy anymore. And yet we were so happy when we finally got there and there were more numbers on our side of the board than there were the other guys. That's a perfect microcosm of why that is a regressive exercise, because you're not going to get that satisfaction every season. Even ask the New England fans about that. How many did they win? Like 7 or something?
Well, and they were the victors that year too.
they still didn't win every time, though. They still didn't win every single time they went.
Oh, man.
And so it's interesting how art, or how life imitates in the mechanics of this ballet, the things it's articulating for us, the lessons that we need to learn, even as we repeat tripping on the same stair over and over again that's broken. And that's what that exercise is. But it's very hard. That's a very hard one to shake. But we have to try. We have to try to step away from it and put it into a position that's a little healthier for ourselves. I really, really wish that I'd never learned to take sides. Because where does taking sides come from? Because I know when Maddie and we recently went to Crypticon. I haven't even talked about this. It was like a couple weeks ago.
I know. We're going to have to dedicate a whole episode to Crypticon.
So we go, like, it was our first Crypticon. I never thought I'd go to one of these things, but it was a really cool experience. But we're in the hotel. We stayed at the same hotel where this happened. And we were done walking around and everything. It was time to relax for the day. And I'm laying in the hotel bed. And the very end of the hockey game is on. The Stanley Cup playoffs are going right now. Well, I called hockey for 7 seasons and was, that was my sport for years. And so it's like, fine. I have no stake in either one of these teams. Like I have a stake in any team, but I don't profess to like or dislike. I'm totally neutral. And I sat and was able to really just enjoy, I guess, that strategery that I talked about, that sort of guts of the game for what it was, without having this emotional bind that I willfully put into it because it's not this team or it's not that team that for one reason or another I've decided that I like. And where does that come from? How do we decide that we like these guys and not the other guys? We're not acquainted with these people. And the way I see it, they're all fucking millionaires. They're all rich, and they all play with their nuts for a living for a few hours, and then they go home. They have the easiest life of any of us, and I personally am not okay with that. We've talked before about the egregiousness of that. You know, I mean, 18 million a season, 50 million, whatever it is, and, you know, how many teachers could that really help out? How many people that go work their ass off their whole lives and never even see a bonus of a few thousand, you know, could that actually do that for? And so I have such a huge problem with the way that we treat it. And that, I think, is the big thing that's misunderstood about my perspective on this, is everybody immediately then wants to lash back and say, you know, if you hate it so much, why'd you do it for so long? If you hate sports, I don't hate sports. I don't like the way that we revere them. We are lost in so much of this. We've lost our minds. So when somebody loses their mind and decides to start paying somebody way too much to do something that clearly isn't worth it, you know, they're not saving lives. They're not doctors. They're not nurses. They're sure as fuck not social workers or people that deal with, you know, physically disabled or challenged kids. They're not wiping up poop from old people. I mean, we have people in the world doing stuff nobody wants to do for a pittance of that. And yet we revere the other side of it. I'm tired of that. Yeah. I don't see it that way. And so that's what I think is important to get across to people, is I don't hate, you know, sports. I don't hate these people. I don't hate the Kardashians, you know, to bring them back into the, I don't approve of what they stand for. And I don't approve of them giving us something that is not worthy of our reverence, and yet they continue to insist on our reverence for these things. That is wrong to me, and I'm always going to stand up against that, always, because we could live in a much better world if it weren't for things like that.
Tear down the walls forever. Rebuild these walls together. Tear down the walls forever. It would be justice to let them fall.
Take me to church.
The Church of Michael Sembello. This is the same guy who did Maniac for Flashdance.
Really, I like it. All right, Jack, until we meet again.
Indeed, at Existence Brewing, we'll brew something up for you next time.
Well, it looks like Jack and Michael have finished up their latest chat about all things existence. But if anything they said got your own Existence Brewing, be sure and catch their other talks at existencebrewing.com and drop them an email to share your thoughts using contact@existencebrewing.com.
Existence Brewing.